Hello, beautifuls. We need to talk. A lot has been happening over the past few days, and it's something that's really going to affect the industry. It's something that needs to be addressed, and it's something I don't think a lot of people understand, so I'm going to do my best to explain it. So keep watching. You've probably heard the name Santino Hassell a lot. Two publishers have recently removed all his books from their shelves, have decided to cancel all pre-orders, and they are refunding books. Riptide, along with refunding books, is giving anybody who ordered directly from them $5 as a kind of apology for what happened and what they weren't aware of. I don't blame them for what happened, but I truly respect the extra effort that they're making to try and improve the situation. So if you have books from Santino Hassell, it doesn't matter when you ordered them, the publisher will refund it. Amazon is also refunding books, so you can contact them. If this doesn't give you an idea of how serious the situation is, well, keep watching and I will do my best to lay out everything that happened and where it started. I'm going to include a timeline just to give you a basic idea of where some of this started. A lot of it happened way before even then, but to keep things brief, I'm going to address the issues that happened between 2011 and now. So here's the timeline. Brief timeline of events. In the Company of Shadows online series, incident with Noah and other ICOS fans, some of which fed into later books. Published solo ebooks and started Patreon. Nikki questioned parts of Santino's many stories. Doxing accusations begin. Pictures are being shown and victims who never gave up begin to come together with their stories. Since there have been threats regarding this case and a lawsuit filed already last year, let me be perfectly clear. I already put up the disclaimer, but just to vocally add to it. I am discussing a public figure and information that is publicly available. All statements within this video are my opinion based on evidence, but that's not relevant. I mean, as the case here might show you, Santino won't file the case, probably because he doesn't exist. My opinion, of course. But I might get sued for eating tacos somewhere or something. I don't know. I'll be including a lot of screenshots here, so I'll try to keep them there long enough for you to see, but for brevity of this video, please, if you'd like to read them, pause, because if I keep them up too long, this video will take hours, and I'm not going to do that. I'm trying to make this a video where all the information will be together and hopefully be easy to understand. So, like I said, just pause if you need to read anything. They're all going to be there, so take your time. This whole situation didn't just happen suddenly. Most of the outskirts of the situation only heard the accusations of doxing. Many reacted and said it was wrong for obvious reasons. Some went much further. But doxing wasn't what was happening. What people who seem to be affectionately called dirty birds were doing was exposing extreme catfishing, gaslighting, and abuse. Piece of advice: do not attack whistleblowers. This should be obvious. We know better. You don't attack somebody who is a victim of abuse. You can't say "me too" and time's up, and then the second there's an issue that hits too close to home, well, you don't believe anymore. We need to listen. And I know a lot of people are listening now. That's a start. For the catfishing, some are confused and think it's an issue about pen names. And let's clear that up. Using pen names, scene names as in BDSM, or more importantly, chosen names as many trans men, women, and non-binary people do, that is not the same in any way, shape, or form. Creating an entire persona to mislead and manipulate, that's where this has become a serious issue. Why does this matter? Well, think about the trans men who write romance, who will be questioned now, who will be doubted, who have their whole lives demanded and exposed. That's a very real danger because of this situation. And the gay men who are genuinely writing in own voices, people won't believe them. People will wonder if they're just another catfisher. And it's understandable in a way because this isn't the first time that this has happened. But that leaves a lot of people, own voices people who should have the right to tell their stories without being questioned. It leaves them vulnerable. And that's all kinds of fucked up. But unfortunately, that's where we are. The author, Santino Hassell, if they were a gay man or bisexual man, them being married would not be an issue. A bisexual man being married to a woman clearly is not an issue. Nobody would question that. The problem is, according to some compelling evidence, they aren't a man. They are a woman writing these stories, posing as a man, and using their husband as the face of their brand. Creating a persona to manipulate people, to catfish people, that's not a brand. I know married couples who write together under a pen name who are honest about the fact they are doing so. I know people who are writing under a pen name, a female writing under a male pen name, and they never use that to try to get close to anybody, to try and get anybody to speak to them because they can relate. Imagine meeting somebody online who he's handsome and the way he talks to you just draws you in and you begin to trust him over time. And you tell him all your secrets. You have sexual exchanges online. You send him pictures, only to have him disappear one day. And later you find out this was actually a woman, and she was sharing your stories. She was sharing your secrets, not only to her friends, not even just online in a way that would be a violation of your trust, but in books. In books that they use to profit off of without ever telling you. They fooled you so that they could have this story that sounded so real. Why did it sound real? Because it was. I'm going to read you one example of this that I found. Some of you might have already read it. If you haven't, please listen, because this is a story and needs to be heard. My name is Noah. In 2013, I came across this book series called In the Company of Shadows, which is written by Sunny and Ice. I've never read anything like it before, and growing up with such a deep need for LGBTQ characters in literature, all my life I immediately fell in love with the story and its characters. The fandom was so small and was entirely made up of girls. I was the only male fan that I knew of. I had a Tumblr and a Goodreads account back then. While I was a huge fan of the books, I barely knew who the authors really were, but I followed both Sunny and Ice on Goodreads and Tumblr because they posted ICOS content. To my surprise, one day, Sunny Santino, whatever her real name is, started commenting on my Goodreads profile and engaging me in conversation. I was never some wide-eyed in love with him fan. I thought he was cool and respected him and admired him and Ice so much for being so woke and writing cool stuff. Months later, he started following me on Tumblr. I started commenting on my posts there, and eventually he private messaged me. He initiated everything between us. I was never running after him, begging to talk and get attention. I wasn't a sycophant of his, and I had no interest in becoming one either. He asked how old I was, and I said 22, even though I was actually 19. I'm not going to lie and say I wasn't flattered and excited that one of my favorite authors was so interested in me and seemed to want to talk to me all the time. He called me kid and joked about how if he was younger he would ask me out in a heartbeat. His words, not mine. We talked on Tumblr via private messaging for a week before he brought up the idea of talking somewhere else. He suggested Gmail or AIM, and we started talking on AIM Messenger. I will also mention I talked with Ice from time to time as well. Nothing but good things to say about her, to be honest. Sunny and I practically talked every day for almost 2 months. We had first connected in December of 2013, and throughout January and February of 2014, we talked on AIM constantly. We shared intimate, private details about our lives and families. I told him I had been sexually assaulted in the past. He told me he had been too. I told him about my father dying from ALS and my sister-in-law who had died from lung cancer, about taking care of my nephew and living with my cousins, Gavin and Marissa, while my brother was in the military. He told me he had liver cancer, but never went into too much detail about it. He told me lots of things, about his childhood, his ex-wife, his roommates, his kids, his parents, his cousin Silvio, his sexual relationships. I never asked or coerced any information he shared with me. He shared it all willingly. I poured my heart out to him, and he listened and comforted me. I did the same for him, and not too soon after we started talking on AIM. He started saying things sexual to me. I was so shocked and surprised it went in that direction, but I went with it, because by that time I was so infatuated with him, and it had nothing to do with his writing anymore. I had never opened up to anyone like that before. We started sexting, and almost every time we talked. We sent each other gifts through the mail. We stayed up late talking about sex and writing and watching movies together, and about meeting each other one day in the future. He talked constantly about wanting to fuck me, and asked me explicit questions, and almost always turned every conversation we had into a sexual one. He sent me porn gifts and videos, and told me what he'd like to do to me. He would ask me if I'd let him fuck me, if I cared how much older he was than me. He asked for pics of me. He even wrote a several-page fic about him meeting me in real life, and fucking me in a bathroom at a bar where I worked. I shit you not. At the time I thought it was all so flattering, but now I see things very differently. Towards the end of February, I was incredibly depressed and going through a very tough time, and confided in Sonny about many things. He didn't seem too sympathetic towards me anymore. If I didn't engage in sexual conversations with him immediately, he'd become distant and bored with me. He ended up not talking to me one day, and I thought he was probably busy or something, but days turned into weeks, then months. It's been 4 years since I last talked to Sonny. I was fucking devastated when he all of a sudden ghosted me, for apparently no reason. I opened up to him and got so attached too damn quick. It makes me angry. I was so naive. He said we were friends, that he enjoyed talking to me, and that he was glad we met, and all that bullshit. I was young and should have known better. I was a toy he had lost interest in playing with. But I never was angry or wanted to get revenge on him. I never spoke about this to anyone. All I felt was confusion and hurt over it all. I couldn't read or enjoy ICOS anymore because it reminded me of him and how I used to feel. I stopped reading in the genre and deleted my Goodreads and Tumblr account because I had all those messages and reminders of this person who made me feel so badly about myself. But imagine my surprise years later, one day when a friend who reads a lot of male mail sent me a link to a book titled Illegal Contact. They thought it was so weird and funny that the two main characters' names were Noah and Gavin. I saw the author's name. My stomach dropped. I had talked so much about my cousin Gavin to Sonny. I knew it wasn't a coincidence. I had moved on and forgotten about him, and yet this brought all the memories and the feelings back. I looked up his other books. I had no idea it had even gotten published. And I saw one book called Strong Signal and read the synopsis. I kept telling myself this had to be a really gross coincidence, but how could it? I asked my friend if she had a copy of Strong Signal. She did, and let me borrow it. I started to read it. I got about halfway through because I kept feeling dizzy and sick reading those scenes that were literally taken out of my life and made into this original story. There were several lines and parts of the book that came straight from our conversations, things that I had said to him, things he had said to me. I can't explain how it made me feel to read those things. I told myself I was overreacting and it wasn't a big deal. But then why did it feel as if someone had torn me apart and strung me up for all to see? It hurt even more when I read an interview of him saying it was all original ideas, that he just came up with it. Our friendship, which I had thought was so strong and special at the time, which he had said over and over again to me how much it meant to him, was just something that could be easily thrown to the side, but then later dusted off and examined and then used to make money off of. I tried to understand what I wanted to say and get across to others who may or may not read this, but even I'm not completely sure. With all that has come out recently about Sonny, whatever their name is, I just wanted to finally tell my story to someone, anyone. There are a few things he said that I had always questioned but was afraid to tell anyone. Not because of him. I was never afraid of him, only his very passionate fan base that seemed to attack and destroy anyone who didn't love and support him. But I feel like I've shared enough for now. I've thought about getting into contact with Nikki, who seems to be the one who revealed the wolf for what she is. I wanted to thank her for making me feel better after all this time. I remember all those posts he made about keeping distance from fans, about boundaries and not encouraging unhealthy, inappropriate writer-reader relationships. And what the hell would you call what he did to me? I was a fan of his and he knew that, and he didn't seem to care about how inappropriate our relationship was. He's a liar, a master manipulator, and a user. Don't trust him. Noah. I asked Noah before I shared this with you, and he was fine with me doing so. So I just want to say to Noah, I'm so sorry this happened to you. People are hearing about it now. People are believing you, and you sharing your story has made a huge difference, so thank you. Now, gaslighting has also been mentioned a lot, and some people don't know what that is. Gaslighting is an abusive technique used to make victims doubt what they know happened. The victims will be told they're remembering things wrong, sometimes even that they're crazy. This happens a lot when victims are kept isolated. It's easier for the abusers to convince them for pretty much whatever they want. And this situation, it happened more and was compounded by a lot of bullying, and people were being misled about who the victim really was, which means you had victims who were treated as if they were the abusers, as if they were the ones who started all this, and they weren't. Another situation that has come up has been authors using Patreon, Kickstarter, Ko-Fi to help supplement their income. On its own, this is not a problem, so long as the reason behind it is honest. If you're using it because, for example, I use it. I have Ko-Fi, which I include in a lot of my videos and that I've shared with my readers. Buy me a cup of coffee. Help me out a little bit with what I'm creating. If you appreciate my work and feel like donating something, go for it. If instead of just saying, if you appreciate my work and feel like donating towards helping me do this, if instead of doing that, I'm saying, I'm really sick. I have a disease that a lot of people have concern for. I don't have to say it directly in the link in the Patreon. If I mention it everywhere else, those two things are going to be connected. My fans are going to think that I have some kind of disease that could potentially kill me, something that I might need help getting through, and they're going to be sympathetic. And skirting the law by not mentioning it in certain ways, if it's not illegal, it's definitely unethical. Some people are saying that this never happened. Here are some screenshots that prove otherwise. There has been a pattern to this behavior that some of the victims have observed, and even some fans had started noticing. It seems that around the time of a new release, or when sales started slumping, all of a sudden there would be a new health issue, there would be some kind of drama, there would be haters coming after the author. I believe the reason this came out now is because the author got overconfident. They were doing very well. They had managed to get a few contracts. They had authors on their side with big followings that they could call on whenever they needed to defend themselves against anybody trying to expose them. The people trying to expose them ended up constantly painted as the bad guy, and conveniently were able to be used at a moment's notice to draw sympathy from readers. So between the haters coming after them and their cancer or their back problems or whatever issue was brought up at the moment, there was always a steady income being brought in by sympathy. Allegedly, of course. I don't know how much of this the co-authors knew. There are many victims, many who were misled, and in the end, it's up to every person involved to decide what they're willing to believe and what they're willing to forgive. I have included links to screenshots, victim accounts, and all the information that I have found on the case. This can be triggering for some, so be warned. Any information that I don't have here, I received directly from some of the victims who I've spoken to and have been very forthcoming. And to them, I say thank you. And again, I am so sorry that this happened to you. As always, comments are open and I welcome discussion. But please be aware that victims may be reading your comments and they've already been through enough. Be kind. This may be something that doesn't affect you, but many have been hurt. I stand by the victims. Saying I believe you needs to mean something, but it's not enough. I hope this finally coming to the light gives some peace to the victims. I also hope that you guys have had an amazing weekend, and if this is something that's been affecting you too, that it being handled and some justice coming out for the victims helps you as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.